Hi, I'm Bill Winterberg. I'm a certified financial planner professional, and my unexpected hobby is playing pinball.
Welcome to Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors, the podcast where we interview fellow financial advisors about their pursuits and pastimes beyond their professional persona, some of which may be surprising to their colleagues and clients. We're interested in what makes them tick and how their unexpected hobbies might or might not relate to their everyday lives. Here's our discussion with this week's guest. Hey, Bill Winterberg.
Hello, Brian and Joshua.
Welcome. Yes, welcome to the Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And what is your unexpected hobby?
I don't know if you're watching the video. It's on my t-shirt. If you're watching the video, it's in the offices, air quotes, offices behind us. My unexpected hobby is that I'm a pinball player, a pretty passionate pinball player.
And for those of you listening or watching while driving, he's showing off his t-shirt, which is a pinball machine in profile, multicolor with a big script that says pinball. So
Yes, sir.
It appears we're talking about pinball today.
Yes, a recurring theme, I'm sure, whether on purpose or by accident, going forward. But yes, a man after my own heart, pinball enthusiast like myself, so it only makes sense that we talk to him as soon as possible so that we can continue to swim around in the hobby that I love.
Now, both of you gentlemen don't even have to leave your homes to play pinball. I see 4 machines behind me, and behind Bill we have 1 machine. How long have you owned your own machine?
It's a good question. I have owned my first machine in 2013 is when I got my first machine. And then I had at one time 3 machines up until 2022. Because of a move from Atlanta to Boston, I did sell all those machines. And then I acquired this that I have, the Guns N' Roses by Jersey Jack, in 2023, if maybe September 2022. I think that's what it was back up here. So I currently have the 1 machine after doing a little bit of moving and downsizing, if you will.
Is there a standard footprint for a machine? Like if all I have is an 800 square foot apartment, how many pinball machines can I have?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. As many as possible.
As many that will fit. As many that'll fit is the answer.
I've played in some people's homes where it's basements or garages, or believe it or not, the dining room is converted to hold machines. And I've seen like 8 machines in a dining room. So you can fit enough in a small space and make it great if you have the partner acceptance factor all figured out.
And there's not a way to play it quietly. Even if you turn down the volume on the speaker, there's still a whole bunch of mechanical thumping and thwacking.
Correct. Absolutely not. Like the Jersey Jack, this has a headphone jack, so you can play it and have all the sound in your headphones, but it's got pop bumpers, it's got the slings, it's got the scoop eject. It makes plenty of noise. So if you can find a basement or a side room or something, rather than your dining room next to your kitchen and your family room, I'd recommend a little off-site location for it.
Welcome to my padded cell with my pinball machine. Is machine the right terminology? Is it a set, a rig, a console?
It is pinball machine. Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did you get into this in the first place?
Super good question. So for me, it was something that attracted me while I was growing up. So this is a story back when I was 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, because believe it or not, this is the 80s. And at the time, kids could get on their bicycles and cross streets of traffic with 4 lanes, okay, and get to the shopping mall. And inside the shopping mall, this was in the South Bay area of California, southern San Francisco Bay area of California. Our shopping mall had an arcade, and it had the stand-up video games. It had things like Ghosts and Goblins and Shinobi. It had Pole Position. It had the hoops, shooting games, the skee-ball games. And over on the side, this arcade had 2 pinball machines. So I got a couple of dollars, maybe of an allowance, or if I just found some change and would be attracted to the arcade, I would start playing the Ghosts and Goblins, the Shinobi and stuff. I put my quarter in and I'd play and I'd try to beat the ghosts and stuff, but I would die after like a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And it's like, insert coin to continue, insert coin to continue. And it's like, dude, my dollar just didn't last very long. That's kind of disappointing. So like, what is this over here? Like, it's a pinball machine. How does that work? And oh, one credit is 25 cents. So let me put a credit in. Okay, I think I'm getting it. And I do some stuff or whatever. And at the end of the game, I lose, not a great score, but then it's got this match thing. What's that about? And it goes and it spins these random numbers, and you have an 80, and the random number, boom, it's 80. And it's like, I got a free game. That's cool. Like no other stand-up arcade game, do they ever give you a free game? So pinball gave me a free game. And I started playing that free game, and I was like, hey, I hit the ramp and it goes jackpot. I hit the ramp again, it goes jackpot. That's really cool. And all of a sudden, the back box, which is the top part of the pinball machine, makes this huge knocking sound. It goes, and you're like, what was that? And the display says, you got a replay. Like, what is a replay? I guess if you get high enough points, you get a free game. So that is what drew me into pinball, is the opportunity to match for a free game, which means you get to play more. Or if you start getting enough scores and high scores and jackpots, you get a replay award, which is another free game. So now all of a sudden my quarter, my 50 cents that I had, that I was losing in a minute on the stand-up arcades, I could play for 15 minutes, 20 minutes on 50 cents on pinball. That's what hooked me back when I was 10 years old with just a few dollars in my pocket, some spare change. I could extract a lot of entertainment value by figuring out, oh, I can actually just be a little good or better than bad at pinball, but enjoy it for 20, 30 minutes. That's what hooked me on pinball at a very young, formative age.
You say hooked, and the way you were describing it sounds really, really similar to the expose hit pieces you hear on people who build apps for children and build casinos, that you put in a little bit and then it gives you a little more and it gives you a little more and it hooks you, and now we're years later and you're still hooked.
Probably says something about why Bally had been in pinball machines and then now own casinos and make software for slot machines.
Yes, that is correct. The Bally's and Williams were huge casino manufacturing operators based in Chicago, right, in the early 20s and 30s. There's got to be some great Wikipedia articles. We don't have to perseverate of the history of everything.
Right.
But yeah, that's where the pinball machines really evolved. And you think about some of these things with, why do you get 3 balls per game in pinball? Well, guess what? It's no accident that you get 3 lives in a video game. So there's a lot of these hallmarks of modern video games that are throwback to the early days of pinball.
So when you look back over the last 35 years or more of your life that you've had this
You're being
relationship, do you have any standout memories or moments aside from that first rush in the arcade, in the subsequent time, that stick out in your mind that really crystallize and encapsulate what it is you love about pinball?
Yeah, I think that I played it a ton at that age 10 through age 12 or 13, but I kind of got disconnected from pinball through high school. But when I went to college, that was when I had that second coming of pinball in my life, if you will, because the student union in the college building had 2 pinball machines, and they had a police force and a Twilight Zone. And Twilight Zone was the pinball machine that ended up taking the most of my money. And that was what developed into the holy grail machine for me. And so if you're not familiar with pinball, it's the Twilight Zone is one of Pat Lawler's, he's the designer, one of his hallmark machines released in 1993. And it was the most manufactured pinball machine ever. Over 15,000 of them were manufactured. The runner-up is Adam's Family with another like 12 or 13,000 manufactured. And it's got all these gadgets and gizmos and software that's pretty sophisticated, and a big payoff called Lost in the Zone, which is the wizard mode, that if you do all the little mini challenges and complete all of them, you can unlock Lost in the Zone, where all the jackpots are lit for 30 seconds. And it just keeps, if you drain the ball, it keeps shooting the ball back into play, so you never lose the balls. You just shoot everything. It's chaos. Build up as many points as possible. So that was the resurgence of, oh my gosh, this is accessible for me at college. After a late night class at like 9:30, I'd play until 11:30 until I got kicked out. but again, on $1 or on $2. And that's when I told myself, man, whenever it is that I'm successful, I am going to own Twilight Zone. So you were being kind about 35 years ago. So that was 1996 that I was started in college. And it took until 2013, which is when I had a good year in business. And it was like, wow, I am going to reward myself. So what's the math? 17 years? 17 years later, I'm like, I'm going to go out on the internet and I'm going to go find somebody who's selling a Twilight Zone. And sure enough, I found somebody in the local Atlanta area who had a Twilight Zone, had restored it and kept it in great condition, and that is the one that I bought. And so that was when it started, that I had a little collection.
Not to reopen old wounds, but then when you had to relocate from Atlanta, were you then that person that had to sell that machine to somebody else that was having a similar experience?
Um, I guess no, because I got connected, I got better connected into the pinball scene and the pinball enthusiasts and people who had home collections at that time. So in 2013 in Atlanta, there was almost no public location to play. It was really hard to find anything. That's why I was compelled to get a machine of my own so that I was not dependent on going to an arcade or a bar to find one to play. So fast forward 7 years, there was this huge upsurgence in personal owners and personal collectors. And in fact, the Atlanta Pinball League that I was a part of went from people's houses each week. We didn't even play in public locations. You would go to basements and garages where people had 8 machines, 10 machines, 12 machines, and you would do kind of this community homegrown tournament there. So it was one of those owners and collectors who had his own garage set up with pinball that we made the deal out there. And was I sad? I talked about Twilight Zone as my holy grail machine. Was I sad to let it go? The answer is no. I played Twilight Zone long enough that I figured it out, air quotes, figured it out, but I learned the software. I learned the quirks and techniques, and pretty soon it was like, okay, I feel like I have mastery of this machine. I'm really confident with it, but now I would like to move on. So the moving was, in more ways than one to move on. It was a good way to move on from the machines that I had into a real modern machine like this Jersey Jack Guns N' Roses, which is just phenomenal from a software, lighting, and code and gameplay design. And so I've had this for 2 years at least, and it's still just as fun to play today as it was the first day that I played the machine. And that's a good hallmark of a good machine to have in your collection and to own in your home.
Speaking of that community experience, and we're interested in the overlap of people's professions and their hobbies, was that the sort of thing that you would be able to take colleagues and clients to do these home sessions in other people's garages, or did that is that not something you could interest your friends and clients in?
There is some overlap. So generally not. It's been a challenge to get regular people, non-pinball players, into pinball. It takes a little while. It takes to that light bulb moment to go off to get somebody to really enjoy the game of pinball, because pinball's hard. Okay, if you don't have a training, if you don't have somebody to coach you and help you out, pinball's a brutal game. It is a game against gravity, and gravity wins 100% of the time. So if that frustrates you, pinball may not be the game for you. But what I did find is
Undefeated.
The collector community and the players, these pinball machines are not inexpensive. And so you have to have some irrational thoughts to drop this type of cash on a piece of metal and wires and balls and a TV screen now.
That is also not light. It is not a light thing to move around.
Correct. So you can't just pick it up and move it. You're correct. So not only is it the pinball machine, but it's the 500-pound dolly, it's the pickup truck, it's the yada yada, and you might need to work out too to move this thing around. So there's a little bit of extra accessories with it to really commit to having one in your house. But the collectors, definitely there is some overlap into the quote unquote wealth management dialogue of, remember, I told myself when I'm successful, I'm going to own a pinball machine. I mean, who says that? That's a weird way to gauge success, but that's where wealth is not really measured in dollars and cents. Wealth is measured in other ways. And I feel wealthy because I have a machine at my disposal 24 hours a day. You know, again, partners and noise levels permitting. But anytime that I want to play it and I need to just get into the game, I can. And that is something that I like and is meaningful for me. But for others, they like to spend their money in a different way. And that's a good, conversation starter about it's not just what is in your bank account or what's in your investment portfolio. It's what you do, it's the experiences that you create and the time that you share with loved ones. That really is the total standard of wealth. So there is some of that crossover into thinking a little bit deeper about wealth management and what does it mean to be, successful from a, investment or portfolio or money perspective. And, owning a pinball machine is totally irrational. No robo advisor is going to tell you, oh, yes, Bill Winterberg, your plan should include 8 pinball machines. They're never going to say that. But for me, it's something that is just really fulfilling and very gratifying to play. And it's just an important part of who I am.
For my dad, it was growing up. It was a Jaguar. When he knew he would have made it if he had that Jaguar. And in terms of the scale of luxury purchase, I think pinball is a much more entry level thing than a Jaguar. And to be clear, I'm talking about Jaguar, the automobile, not the exotic animal. So,
well, and I've
Correct.
joked before, like I love old classic cars. My dad's a car guy and a Corvette guy, and I've made comments before. I've made comments once to my wife, like, "Oh, it'd be great to have like an old Camaro or an old '60s Corvette or Mustang or something." And she's like, you do have that. It's in your basement, and they're called pinball machines." And like just from like a use of capital for entertainment, like is she's right. Like my '68 Camaro is behind me on this wall, and it's funny because these things run 5 to 15,000 for like the new souped up brand new pinball machines. And it's like you walk into a basement, somebody's got 10 or 12 of those things. You're like, man, there's some net worth right here. It's wild.
Absolutely correct. I've been into some collector basements and there's been many machines and you're like, wow, there's a lot, of asset allocation down here. But, the trade-off is to be able to play it and to be able to host a small local tournament, to be able to host family and friends. Those are the things that are hard to measure in dollars and cents. And to certain people in certain households, that's where the meaning really is. And so, that's a good, conversation starter again, that wealth is not always on the balance sheet. It is other places as well.
100%.
at the same time, it is a visual indicator that there's some degree of discretionary income, and not to put it in a crass or mercenary way, but as you were in this community, were there ever opportunities for business development? Did you end up with any clients because you became friends with somebody in the community that naturally parlayed into your professional life?
I would say it definitely created lots of connections and potential for opportunities. I moved away from the Atlanta group, and so I don't engage with them anymore. I have not yet found a vibrant. There is a New England Pinball League. I've played once or twice in it, but it's on me to go and be more prolific and participatory in that group. So, but the short answer is yes. But specifically for me, nothing has materialized. But just have this shared interest and have connections and think about irrational purchases and irrational ownership in a more healthy and meaningful way, I think is a good way to make connections with others and see what kind of potential it can turn into.
If somebody's been listening and thinks, the way that Bill describes his relationship with pinball, I think I might be interested in that for myself. What would you tell somebody that was interested in getting their feet wet in the pinball scene?
I think the three things, if you're interested in getting into pinball, is understand it takes patience. So pinball is a game of patience, not necessarily speed or how quickly you play. So understand that it's patient and it takes time to unwind the software of these machines, the little quirks of the shots that they have, how the rules are organized. So take some patience to learn and to become a good player. And also, what's interesting is anybody can walk up to this Jersey Jack machine, the Guns N' Roses, and play it for $1, and you might get 100,000 points out of 3 balls. But then a professional walks up to this thing, they get the same 3 balls, and we're excluding extra balls and all the bonuses, but they can put up 1 billion points. It's like, Nothing has changed. They didn't like lift the legs to give it no gravity or any cheats like that. But like, what is it that separates the daily player from the professional player? And that is their ability to be patient and shoot the shot that makes the most sense, but also control the ball as well. So it's all about patience of, can you slow the game down? Can you cradle the ball? That's a big thing for beginners to learn how to do. Is it's not always flip as soon as the ball comes to the flipper. Sometimes the best course of action is to not flip. Just let the ball hit the flipper and then it bounces over to the other flipper. They call that a dead bounce. But what that does is it takes the ball speed and it cuts it like in half. But it also puts the ball on the other flipper. If you flip the flipper before the ball goes in it, you cradle it and the ball rests there right in the cradle between the flipper and the in-lane ramp. Now you have paused the game. You have the ball under your control. Now you can think, do I want the spinner? Do I want the scoop? Do I want the ramp? What's the best shot for me right now? Then you can release the flipper, the ball rolls down, and you flip to try and get the shot that you want. That's all about patience, is learning it. And that second thing is going to be that hand-eye coordination. If you have good hand-eye coordination, pinball is the game for you. So learning when to flip, what the little electronics delay is to when you push the button and all that stuff, and how long you want the ball to roll across the flipper to make the ramp or to make the spinner, that hand-eye coordination is really paramount in this game. And the third one that I alluded to a little bit is learning the rules and understanding the constraints of the machine. So the machine has software and it has rules. So when you shoot a ramp, it doesn't always give you the same number of points each and every time. There are ways to start game modes or to qualify jackpots, and that can increase or usually never decrease. Well, there are some games where you get decrease when you make a when you make a ramp shot.
Some of
But
them, yeah.
learning the rules and learning what the constraints are of the machine allows you to kind of build the blocks and like, oh, if I do these three things in sequence, whether it's a combo or I start a mode and then start multi-ball and I get a multiplier, like there's ways to double or triple or quadruple what each shot is worth, then you begin to find the rhythm and unlock the machine. You get those high scores, you get your free games, and if you're good enough, you get to put your name as a grand champion on that machine. So those are the real three things that everyone new to pinball, I encourage them to focus on.
What I've found interesting, especially people down here playing that aren't pinball people, is they start playing and I run up to them and say, oh hey, do you want to know the rules? Let me explain the rules to you. And they look at me like, rules? I guess the rules just to keep the ball alive. It's like, well, yes, that's rule number one. But I've been able to kind of winnow it down to say, okay, if it's flashing, shoot for it. Like, so that's kind of like the 101 pinball. It's like, first, don't let the ball drain, and two, if something's flashing, try to hit it. Like, if you can do those two things, then you can start putting scores up, and then you let them, you give them 10 or 15 minutes, and then then the scores start to really climb. So that's always fun.
Is there a standard tilt? Does every, I guess, what's the, like in race cars, you have to have the certain configuration every time. Is there a standard tilt to the floor, or is that game to game?
So the what you're talking about is if I grab my machine, it's interesting. The not advanced players, more comfortable players. One difference between pinball and video games is I can actually influence the outcome of the game by moving this machine, by nudging it. And so sometimes if the ball is bouncing around, the in lane feeds to your flipper, but the out lane feeds to the drain. If the ball is bouncing around there are some times where I can nudge the machine just at the right moment that it might hit a little bumper and it'll bounce back into the play field and into play. However, there is a little called a tilt bobber. It's just a weight on a metal line, and there's a ring around it. And if you move that bobber too much so that it conducts electricity on the ring, that will tilt the machine. It tells the machine that it's being moved too much. Old machines, you wouldn't get any warnings. It would just cut off the game. Modern machines will give you what's commonly called a warning and then a double warning. And if you tilt again, your ball is lost because you tilted.
Three
and
strikes.
what, 3 balls, 3 strikes. That's right. So that is what's found in most modern or almost all pinball machines. So it keeps you from cheating, from like lifting up the front to rescue the ball and put it back into play. That's obviously a full blown tilt. But good players can tilt it just enough to rescue the ball, but not end that ball's play. And the bobber is set by the pinball operator, and it can be really tight. So it's actually screws up and gets closer and closer to that metal ring, or you can unscrew it so it's super low, or you can even take the weight off and it's almost a no tilt. So it just depends on what the operator sets for this machines in the wild on what the level of sensitivity is. But at most tournaments, it's super, super tight and you can barely breathe on the machine and it'll start giving you warnings, which helps keep the scores low, helps keep the tournaments running quickly. But yes, you can find all different ranges of tilt sensitivity in the wild.
Yeah, and as far as like the pitch or the angle of the play field, yes, I mean, yes, there every machine, or especially on newer machines, they'll have little, a bubble leveler that's actually built in, so you can get a sense of kind of where it's supposed to be. There's like a manufacturer's recommended setting. But you can, as an owner, I mean, you can set the back of the legs. You could put the legs. All of them have feet that screw in and out and go up and down, like a furniture, like a leg of a furniture, of a table. And you can set that. Mine are set pretty high because I like gravity. I like the higher the pitch, the faster the ball comes down, and the harder it is to kind of shoot far and shoot back. And I like games that to me, they play faster. So yeah, is there a standard, every machine has to be this? I don't think so, but I don't know.
No, and I would hate to see an operator set up machines so difficult in the public,
Right.
so that the public gets disenfranchised with pinball. I think the machines in the public should be set stock or standard with a more than generous tilt to encourage more play and more entertainment. There should be, there should not be huge limits. Now, in a personal collection, I'm with you. The machine should play difficult, but it should play fair. And that's what helps competitive players get better playing machines that are playing pretty difficult.
We talked about who this might be good for. Is there a certain type of person that really shouldn't bother really considering that this is not for you? You like doing whatever, and aside from, you don't have hand-eye coordination, don't do this. But you talked about patience, hand-eye coordination. Is there been a sort of person that's just not cut out for pinball?
I mean, as an advocate for pinball, I think it's great for everybody. Right. But I think the reality is, if you do struggle with hand-eye coordination, pinball's a really challenging game to approach and to excel at. So really fine-tuning and working on your hand-eye coordination, knowing when to flip and also when not to flip, and how to score the shots that you want to, when you want to, that's really important. I asked somebody at a league event, what does it take to be a good pinball player? And he said kind of flippantly, he's like, don't miss any shots. That's all it takes. Just
Right.
Don't miss. Like, oh, okay. It's so easy, but in practice, it's so hard. So if you find it frustrating that the hand-eye coordination doesn't work and you miss more frequently than you miss, pinball, it's going to be a pretty frustrating game. You might want to try something else.
It's just like investing, right? You buy the stocks that go up, not the ones that go down. That's all there is to it.
Just buy the ones that go up and keep growing. It's so simple.
Yeah, I'd say if you're easily frustrated, stay away from pinball, because even the best, I mean, it's like anything. Like, you're the best baseball players strike out. Like, you'll go from having just a terrible game. If you don't walk away there and rage quit, your next one could be the grand champion game. It's just never know. And it's that unpredictability, I guess, of like, well, what's the next one going to be? And you don't want to give up. I want to try it again. You want to try it again. So much, a lot of players will, if their first ball drains quickly, they'll just reset the game. They'll say, like, I'm starting over. And because in order to get a high score, you really want to get a lot of points on every ball. So the first ball is very, very important to get a good rhythm going. So it's great. I'm with you. Like, it's for everybody. I love it.
So if these things are often found in bar settings, is there a degree of tipsiness that helps, or do you need to be stone cold sober to make this work?
Well, good question. Yeah, I guess I
Or
could
does it
speak
mellow
from.
the frustration? That you have a better personality once you've had a couple and you're able to handle the vicissitudes of the experience.
Yeah, there's probably a good middle of the road because once you go on the excessive side, your hand-eye coordination and all observation, you shouldn't be operating heavy machinery, and I think we've qualified this as heavy machinery. So
Definitely.
when you go too far, that's going to be detrimental to your performance. But I do think that if you're having fun and you're moderating, I think you can be a good player. I've seen plenty of players do it. Go to a bar and have one or two and put up some great scores. It's like you're having fun, you're in the zone, you're just playing fluid, you can sense the flow. It's a magical feeling when it happens to you as a player, no matter what your skill level, as a beginner or as an advanced player. When you feel it and you're in the flow and you're making shots, for someone like me, it's almost no better feeling in the world.
But I would guess in a professional tournament context, no drinking, dry.
I I would endorse that. I think in a professional tournament context, these tournaments are grueling. Some of these tournaments, like the qualifying is 2 hours, and then the post qualifying can be 6 hours or 8 hours, depending on the number of players and the number of divisions. So it's like an endurance deal. So you need to stay hydrated. You need to drink plenty of water. Keep your hands clean. Don't touch your eyeballs, or else you'll get sick. So all those little tips and tricks is what I would advocate if you're going into like the tournament setting is to, you can have a few if it's at a bar, but also drink water. It's a little bit of an endurance thing, and it helps keep your mental acuity strong for a number of hours. And that's, warming up for your first tournament. Find something local, find something that's not too big, but drink some water, offset things, stay hydrated, stay healthy, but more importantly, just be ready to have a good time.
So on the list of people this isn't good for, it's people with a small bladder, people who are germaphobes, and the immunosuppressed should not.
That is correct. Well, or you could just invest in plenty of hand sanitizer and practice good hygiene too. That helps.
Or that.
Yeah, the tournaments are wild. I mean, like you'll look in and have chairs around because if you're not playing, then a lot of times you're sitting around and waiting. And I mean, there are people that they'll have noise canceling headphones on, and they just have they have their game face on. It's very, very serious. I've actually I've never competed once in any sort of tournament, even local, aside from just like who can get the high score in my basement. But it's pretty fascinating to just kind of watch from this, as an observer. And
Is it a spectator event? Do people show up and watch? I don't think I've ever seen pinball on like ESPN3, or have I not been paying attention?
the Ocho, that's only on the Ocho, I think.
So yes, pinball is a spectator sport. This is a good thing with the technology evolution. It used to be that you could just get one or two people right on either side of the machine and they could watch another player out there. Because just a word of caution, if you're standing next to me, be prepared to get nudged yourself. You might catch a leg or something.
It's a contact sport.
It is definitely a contact sport with the machine and with the audience. But with the advent of sites like Twitch, a lot of pinball owners and pinball players have figured out how to do like a 3-camera setup. So we'll do a top-down camera over the playfield, one camera at the scoreboard, and one camera at the player. So they use software like OBS, the Open Broadcast Software, to do a 3-camera layout and broadcast via Twitch. So now pinball has the opportunity to be a global social sport. So people in chat could say, hey, you need to build up this, or you should turn on double scoring here, or how did you get that jackpot, right? You could talk through the microphone through Twitch, and it becomes this social sport now. And more locations and bars and arcades are also they're setting up a television above the machine that's connected to a top-down camera. So now you don't need to be standing right next to the machine. You can be in the back of the audience, and you can see that player and the ball moving in the shots that are scoring. So it's definitely technology has allowed pinball to be a much more social sport, not only in the arcade and bar setting, but worldwide as well. So I still have a Twitch channel. I'm out there on Twitch/Bill Winterberg when I had my Twilight Zone machine. So I have old stuff. I just haven't set it up yet. now that I've moved here, because, well, this is my office. I should move it to my basement, but it's the whole 300 pounds moving thing
Right.
by yourself. But I would encourage anybody who's curious about seeing some competent pinball players, which may or may not include us, but find some pinball streams on Twitch and just watch some of these players go, or find a tournament that they're doing a live stream on Twitch and watch the tournament players go. And it'll blow your mind what they can do by stopping the ball, by doing like a post pass where they move it from one flipper to the other under their full control. It's like, wow, I never knew you could do those things with pinball. And that's why the professionals are able to get grand champions and win money for pinball machines and win free pinball machines too. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, and like Twitch is a great example of kind of seeing where technology is taking it. But talk a little bit. You have like Stern Insider Connected. Like that's fairly new. That's a fascinating way for people to connect as well.
Yeah, it is. So Stern's the leading manufacturer of pinball machines based in Chicago. So they now have a QR code reader down in the apron of the game. So if your local location is connected to Wi-Fi and the operators turn it on, you can now register your player profile, scan into the machine, and as you unlock achievements, as you get jackpots, as you get high scores, you get your little badges and awards in your mobile phone or in your Stern Insider Connected account. And then Stern does, competitions with high scores for certain machines. They'll do little small tournaments. But now instead of just playing against the people at your own location, you can now compete, I guess, globally with others who are participating in the Stern Insider Connected. So it's an interesting kind of phase one way to make pinball more social and not just a one player experience, but also you'll see how you do relative to other players, see how many experience points you can collect, and see how many different games you can play. So it's a pretty cool way to bring it into the internet connected era.
Well, you've done a great job of advocating for the experience, the sport, the hobby, and giving us some good places to go if people want to learn more about that. Where would people go if they wanted to learn more about you and the work that you do in your real life?
Yeah, indeed. When I'm not a unexpected pinball player, I do consulting business in technology for financial services. And so I'm pretty prolific out there on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Bill Winterberg on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on Twitter. So I'm Bill Winterberg on Twitter. I also have my business consulting site, which is fppad.com. And I've got an email newsletter sign up. You can do free stuff out or a free sign up. And occasionally you get emails from me. I don't blast people very often with that, but I'll send out thoughts and ideas about technology and financial services. So those are three great places to find me. But from the pinball perspective, what do I have? I have the Pindigo app. So if you have Pindigo, you can download that app. I'm Bill Winterberg on Pindigo, and that's where I catalog all the high scores on games that I play in the public. So any new city, any new location where I go, I try to use the maps on pinside.com to find a location where I can play pinball. And I'll play those games and I'll take a picture of the scores that I get and I'll upload them into Pindigo. So that'd be a great place to follow me to see my high scores in the different locations that I play.
All right, there we go. Well, Brian, this is going to be one of our few chances to interview somebody that shares your hobby. Is there anything you want to make sure we hit before we close out?
No, I worked really hard to not talk. I just wanted to listen because if there were any topic that I could just completely take over, which I'm trying to be a good host and not do that, this would be it. So no, this is fantastic. So much more we could talk about.
I can feel you vibrating through the couch.
I know, this is great. I love pinball. I love talking to people with pinball and love talking, especially with all hobbies. I mean, it's just, you light up. Like we could talk financial planning for 45 minutes and it would be wonderful and we'd enjoy and it would be entertaining and all of that. But like nothing quite like somebody's hobby. So Bill, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate your time and your stories. And we look forward to following you and watching what you have going on in the pinball world.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Joshua.
Thanks for being here. Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors is brought to you by Fiduciary CFO, forward-thinking tax and planning solutions for business owners, like RIA firms and their business owner clientele. The opinions of Brian, Joshua, and their guests are for entertainment purposes and should not be construed as legal, tax, financial, or investment advice. you should know better than to take any of this content seriously.